Today's session is Level Up Your AQ. For those of you who do not know us yet, first time to attend LJMB webinars, we are a training company based in Makati, Philippines. And we are a 15-year-old provider of training products and services solutions to different organizations. Your resource person this afternoon is yours truly, Louie Banta, CEO and Chief Consultant of Learning Just Made Better, have been in this business of speaking, informing, inspiring, and influencing people for the past 3 decades. And also proud to share with you our global presence. We've gone around, we've conducted training for organizations across 9 countries and 4 continents. Happy to note that in the past 2 weeks, we've been joined by friends from different parts of the globe, Italy, UAE, Japan. We also have friends with us today who are joining from Southeast Asia, and I heard from some people from North America. In our first offering in April 1 to 3, we equipped leaders on how they can manage their teams who are adjusting to the new work from home setup because of the lockdown with 3 of the topics here. Then last week, we offered a free webinar entitled Resiliency 2.0. You know, people are generally resilient. They give us disasters after disaster, calamity after calamity. We just had the recent one here in the Philippines, the eruption of Taal volcano to start 2020. Then, who would forget 7 years ago, Yolanda or Typhoon Haiyan, the destruction it brought at the Central Visayas area. And in 2011, apologies if I'm able to stimulate negative feelings. So, of course, reminding us of what happened in Japan, the earthquake and the tsunami. But people are able to bounce back. Communities are able to rebuild again. And it's as if nothing happened. However, what's tough is when people are in the midst of a crisis, a calamity, and disaster. And that's why it's Resiliency 2.0, because it's not just a normal kind of crisis that we're experiencing right now. It's a combination of different factors that really test our ability to not just survive, but also thrive in this scenario. Because it's a medical emergency compounded by societal disruption and economic loss, and it's now continuously a government acid test for most of the leaders. We have experienced these 3 things. We threw away all of our routines and we're trying to figure out what to do. We are faced with questions that we don't have answers to, and of course that leads to, compounded with fear, the feelings of anxiety. So COVID-19 brings us now to how can our resiliency, tested and trained in the past experiences of disasters and calamities, be brought to the next level. Connected with our topic of resiliency, which will also help you strengthen your resolve to bounce back during and after this crisis, is these 2 letters, AQ. In the next 50 minutes or so, we'll talk about this terminology, not EQ, not IQ. IQ, the previous yardstick or measurement of success. The more you have it, the more you're perceived to be more successful in what you do and in what you will do in the future. But IQ has been replaced with another Q, EQ. Most of you, if not all, are familiar with emotional intelligence. And we say that it's not the cognitive ability, but it's the ability to be self-aware, aware of your emotions, aware of emotions of others, and be able to manage our relationships. That really becomes a make or break in successful work and life relationships. It's not IQ and EQ, they're both equally important, but we're introducing AQ, or Adversity Quotient. Just like IQ and EQ, AQ is measurable. It is an ability that anyone can develop, can train, and harness. And let's put a simple definition of AQ on the screen here. It's the ability of any person to be able to successfully, effectively deal with adversities in life. Let's have a rundown of synonyms here: challenges, trials, obstacles, hurdles, barriers, no matter how you put it. And no matter in what area of life are you experiencing it. We have about 130 people who's watching our webinar right now. And it's open to everybody. There might be a few of you who are still studying. You may have encountered a lot of adversities in school, failed exams, or failed academic requirements. Then you go to work, you make your big adjustment from depending on teachers, now being able to prove yourself reliable in the corporate setup. Let's talk about love life. Heartaches, heartbreaks continue to be adversities for people. Let's talk about career. Let's talk about a tough boss, or let's say a promotion that you did not get, or economic loss in the case of people who are financially struggling right now. Perhaps some of you have been impacted by either reduced working from home or no work, no pay setup, and some of you may have also been subject to layoffs in your respective companies who are also trying to survive. And of course, COVID-19 is a health issue. Some of you may be sick, some of you may be taking care of sick relatives, and worst case scenarios would be loss of loved ones, death of loved ones in the family. And we can have a long list of things, events that we can consider as adversities in life. So we have a very beautiful photo here of somebody who's pushing a boulder uphill. And of course, you can imagine with the force of gravity, it's not an easy task. Some people succeed, some people don't. So what makes that difference? And in our session today, let's give credit to the founder of Peak Learning Training Company who pioneered the work on Adversity Quotient. Paul Stoltz is a famous speaker and management consultant, and he really made use of their scientific research on Adversity Quotient in equipping and empowering companies to succeed no matter what financial, political, and business challenges they encounter on a daily basis. And as we always say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Okay? What's overprotected doesn't survive. Okay? We just need to outlast this. You know, that's my firm belief here, that this virus will not last forever. I'm sure it will not last forever. We may not know when it will end, but I'm sure we just need to outlast this, make sure that when this is over, we are ready to seize all opportunities that are in front of us. Let's now go to our agenda for this afternoon. There are 3 big blocks that I will cover in the next 50 minutes that's available to us. I'll talk about the 5 stages that people go through when they deal with adversity. And here, the higher you move in this ladder, the better for people. The stronger you enable your adversity quotient. Then we'll talk about how you can cast your fears aside. Because in these times of crisis and anxiety, it's the fear that sometimes paralyzes you. And we always believe what happens here affects what happens here. And if you think in a certain way, it will affect your feelings. And you know how powerful feelings can get, and that those feelings will drive your day-to-day behavior or reaction. And since it's also time for us to practice a lot of self-leadership, good if you have your boss still motivating you, good if you get enough social support from your relatives and friends and families and loved ones, good if you are able to get even financial, tangible assistance from somebody. But if there's nobody whom you can depend on, some people might be living alone during these perilous times, the kind of self-leadership that will make us more resilient and throw in any adversity, you can survive, you can immediately bounce back. Let's talk about the 5 stages that people go through when they deal with adversity. And it's not that You can go through it step by step. Some people go through it step by step. Some people prefer to just operate at the lower levels. Some people can immediately jump to levels 4 and 5. Let's discover the first step that people go through when they deal with adversity. And it can be a favorite of a lot of people, especially those who are paralyzed by fear. The immediate reaction is, I want to avoid whatever kind of adversity or challenge. Let's go out of the COVID scenario right now and quickly assess yourself. Do you also get into that trap of avoidance before? At school, at work? Is there a coworker that's difficult to handle, and whenever you'll be in meetings or interactions with this coworker, you try your best to avoid him? Do you try your best to avoid discussions on sensitive matters that you don't like to talk to? Let's say finances, especially when you're talking to your spouse or partner. Do you have that tendency to avoid or deny that there's no problem, or ignore, thinking that the problem will go away? However, if we look at the current COVID-19 crisis, this is a problem that we cannot really avoid. We have to face it. We have to look at the reality. We have to look at the facts in front of us. We can't deny that this is happening around us. The effects are really tangible. It has changed our lifestyle. Let's go to the second one. If you're not in avoidance mode, maybe you've tried to avoid it and you realize it's not a good option because it will eventually catch up on you, whether it's a monetary problem or a relationship problem. Some people just say, I'm not avoiding it, I will go through it, I will face it, but my goal is to really just survive. And survival here is focusing on the bare minimum effort. And sometimes people don't exert as much effort. And the motto here can be when you ask somebody, how are you? And this person will just say, well, any day that I wake up, I'm breathing, I'm alive, is good enough for me. Take a look at that mindset. Any day I just wake up and breathe is a sign of life. That's survival mode. Okay? And it's better than avoidance. However, you may not be able to anticipate and act right now on what's in store for you in the future. So let's go to number 3. Number 3 is about coping. And coping is different from just surviving, because in coping, you really intentionally and consciously spend effort. Let's say you have financial issues right now, you're on reduced work from home, or you just got laid off from your company. What are coping mechanisms that you can do? Maybe you can check out available work, online work that you can do given the social distancing and the lockdown. You can explore options. For the more spiritual people in this webinar, you can, of course, resort to prayer and enriching your spirituality. Some of you might be making use of your time for other things. So that's good. You're trying to cope with the scenario in front of you. What could be better is be able to manage the adversity so that it goes to your advantage. It turns out to be beneficial for you. And a higher level of managing here is to even use the powerful verb, harness the adversity. Make use of it. Like a lot of downtime available to us right now, turn it into productive time. I have that bias that even if we are experiencing emotions at this point, we can push ourselves, we can motivate ourselves to do something about it. And productivity is not just limited to work. Productivity can also extend to bonding, improving relationships, even spending time to continuously develop yourself on a mental level, invest in knowledge, invest in skills, so when this is all over, the adversity has indeed made you a better person and professional. You can eye that promotion once more. You can eye that financial goal once more because you welcome the crisis. Actually, we can't avoid it. We can't deny it. You embrace the crisis with open arms, and you told the crisis, COVID-19, I'm going to use you to become a better employee, to become better at the stuff I'm doing, or to be better at stuff that I have not yet explored doing. So if you look at these 5, based on research by Paul Stoltz and the company, most of the people will have 1, 2, 3 as their default. Just trying to survive, or better than survive, really focusing their efforts in solving the problem. But there's view is short term when you're coping. The view in managing and harnessing is, what should this crisis teach me now that I could use 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months down the road? That's the first block that I'd like to share with you today. Please assess which one is your frequent way of dealing with any kind of adversity. Before COVID, because COVID-19, this crisis in front of us, will just magnify our existing strengths, and it will also magnify our existing weaknesses. What do I mean by that? If you're good at one thing, it will show. Great leaders will really shine at this moment. And I'm sorry to say that any kind of incompetence or lack of empathy and compassion will really be obvious and visible in your behavior and reactions to situations during these times of crisis. And you can see the strengths and weaknesses being exhibited by corporate leaders, by political leaders, by your community leaders, by some companies when they deal with people issues and financial issues. Nobody's really exempted here. So your response will show where you are in this continuum. It's really the fear of adversity that we need to address first. The fear, compounded by the uncertainty, leads to anxiety. And last week in the Resiliency webinar, I gave you an exciting set of 8 tips to frame the situation. So that means when you encounter any adversity, when you look at COVID right now, when you look at job loss, when you look at you're not able to go out, you are missing your weekday and weekend routine, what's the framing that you will use then? Here I will share with you a way to cast your fears away. Whatever is causing your fear or anxiety, just like the fisherman who's casting his net with that strong force out on the river, how can you cast this net so that you're able to address your fears? And this is something that I created in the process of preparing for this webinar. We reviewed the literature and there are different versions of what's available there, but I believe that the following will simplify, will give you a simple handle on how to view this COVID crisis right now. And CAST stands for 4 questions, easy questions. And you can apply this as well to any kind of challenge or problem that is happening in your life. Is the problem first and foremost controllable? And of course, there are factors beyond our control, and we'll discuss that in a while. How much accountability can you exert so that you're able to solve your situation? Is it a specific event? Is it temporary in nature? And studies in the past 4 decades have shown that a person's answer to these questions will determine largely whether he or she will succeed, bounce back, become more resilient, and will show higher adversity quotient. So, let's start our journey to strengthening our adversity quotient with these 4 simple questions. We'll zero in on each one. When you talk about controllable, the specific question here is, can you influence what is happening? Or if you cannot influence what is happening, especially that some things have already happened, you can't bring it back, can you influence what happens next? And you'll be surprised that the answer to this question can be yes, most of the time, if not all the time. Now, what distinguishes people who have low adversity quotient with people who have high adversity quotient is that the people who are low in adversity quotient, those who score low here, will say, it's beyond my control. There's nothing I can do about it. It's not my fault. Whereas those who will display higher adversity quotient will focus on there's something that I can control here. There's a part of the situation that I can definitely act on. And if you cannot control the adversity or the challenge because it has already happened, and COVID is a perfect example. You can actually tell yourself, COVID happened to everyone. Nobody wanted this. Nobody anticipated this. Nobody's prepared for this. Nobody could possibly have predicted this, that it will really disrupt us at this scale. So you can check that, the adversity in itself, COVID coming to Philippine shores and causing thousands of deaths and infections, paralyzing our economic and social life. Yes, that's beyond your control. But take a look at the two lines here. The effect of the crisis can be within your control. Will you panic or will you prepare? Your response to what's happening around you is largely within your control. Low AQ people think it's not within my control. I can't do anything about it. High AQ people will think there is something I can do. This can be within my control, or I can influence it, or I can influence parts of it. Okay? And just reinforcing the government's call to really stay at home and observe the quarantine and the lockdown, because the only way by which we can stop all of this is when we're able to flatten the curve and significantly reduce the number of infections and deaths. That's the only way. That's why your contribution here, what's within your control, is to resist that urge to go out. And if you're getting bored at home, to find different ways of maximizing your time on relationships, on physical strengthening exercise, mental conditioning. You write a book, engage in a hobby. Your response is definitely within your control. Let's take a look at the next one. Some people say, yes, I can do something about it, but will I do something about it? That's the next question. Can I do something about it? And will I do something about it? Because one of the frequent barriers here in accountability, in fact, the opposite of the word accountability, as we teach in our accountability workshops, is victimization. I repeat that. Accountability is the ideal state, victimization. Victim of excuses. Victims of thought that I did not cause it, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. Maybe we're pointing fingers to a lot of other things. We're blaming our community leaders, we're blaming our government leaders, we're blaming our heads of the families, we're blaming our leaders at work, our management in our respective companies. Or we're blaming China, or we're blaming some other entities that we believe have contributed to this problem. And while let's acknowledge that you may have a valid point, yes, those entities I've enumerated earlier could have contributed to the worsening problem that we have in front of us. But thinking that way will not help you control your response. Thinking victim will definitely make you more paralyzed and not engaged in action. So let's just recap. You have to look at the adversity, this crisis, as controllable. There's something that you can do, and you may have to make yourself accountable to improve the situation. Let's go to S, and S here stands for specific. The question here is this adversity, is this crisis, is COVID only limited to this aspect of my life? And again, COVID is again a special situation, because if we go pre-COVID days and you say you got a failed performance rating, you can easily isolate that and say, okay, I got a failed rating at work, but I may have high marks based on my kids, because I'm a good father. My spouse appreciates the way I'm able to fulfill my responsibility as a partner. You can score high in other areas of life. You may have problems with spirituality, but you excel in economic, career facets. That's the ability to be able to specify the areas in life that's impacted by the crisis. So take a look at this man who's juggling. I see this is a very powerful photo. The problem can be economic. That's okay. It's not affecting your family life. It may, I know, but right now it's not. So don't panic. Don't overblow, escalate the problem out of proportion. This is important thinking, because a lot of people who get panicky, who may have challenges surviving through crisis, are those people who think, I'm screwed up, pardon the word, or if something happens in one area of life, they think they already failed in everything else. A poor grade, a failed exam doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Being laid off at work doesn't mean that you're already bad in relationships or you're no good or service to others. The ability to be able to localize, that's the implication of thinking things specific here. So while COVID is unique because, wow, it hits you hard on the health issue, it paralyzes you into thinking, will I get the virus? And will I get sick? Especially if you still go out there, you're a frontliner, you have to go out, you have to commute and travel on the road. And it has also hit us economically. It has disrupted our routine. Still, the power of the person with AQ is to be able to focus on just a small area in life that's affected. Don't link everything else. It's as simple as playing this game called Jenga. Eh? And you know, some of you, most of you have played this already. You take out one piece, and of course, you're scared that it will impact on everything else. But it's thinking, if I do this right, the tower can still stand. One failure in my life doesn't mean that everything is already a failure. However, people who are low in AQ will always think this will affect all other areas of my life. And the Jenga version here, when people think global and not specific, global means, wow, I screwed up, and therefore I screwed up in my entire life, is something like this. The thinking, the doomsday sayer thought, oh, I lost my job, therefore my family will hate me, and of course that domino effect of negative emotions, we don't want that. Let's go to the last letter in cast, temporary. The ability of the high AQ person to think that what's happening right now, and these are my own words, this is the question I also ask myself, I tell my team, will this end, or end soon, or end somehow? It will end somehow, sometime down the road. And my conclusion is, yes, this will end. This will end soon, if not so soon, because they say that the vaccine, the cure is 18 months away. It will end anyway. What's 18 months? That's a difference in perspective. Some people will say, what, 18 months? That's 1.5 years of lost time. Would you rather focus on that? Would you focus on something that you can control and say 18 months, especially depending on the pacing of your life in your organizations, can just fly by so fast. So whatever you do with those 30 times 18 months, 30 days times 18 months, is now really up to you. Temporary thinking is for the high AQ. People who have low AQ will tend to not see the light at the end of the tunnel, but focus on the problem is here to stay. I can't do anything anymore. I can't recover. This will now be for life or forever. Let's just recap. Important in your mindset in strengthening your AQ. If something happens, COVID is happening right now, and the effects of COVID, the different impact of COVID on you and your families. Please share this. Cast your fears away, or cast the net, so that you'll be able to manage how you see challenges in front of you. Is it controllable? Are you accountable? Is it specific? Is it a temporary event? If you say yes to all of these questions, then you're on your way to strengthening or exhibiting a stronger ability to deal with anyone or anything that's in front of you. Now, the trick is to be able to say yes. And it's not the reality that's in front of you. It's your perception that you are in control. It's your perception that is specific and temporary. It's what the mindset can do to impact our ways of feeling and the ways of acting and responding to day-to-day situations. For the last block that I'd like to cover, it's now a time to really shine with our personal leadership. We've always said that the best leaders are the best followers, and leadership indeed starts with oneself. In my lifetime, in our lifetime, given the complexity and the complication of this COVID crisis, intertwined problems, there's no better time to really exhibit our leadership. And let's start by leading ourselves before we can engage in communication, so that others can also learn how to do this on their own. We listen to our reactions. We explore the current situation in front of us. We analyze the evidence, and we do something about it. Let's talk about the first step to self-leadership, strengthening your AQ. Listen to your reactions. Listen to your response. Listen to your self-talk. Sometimes we don't verbalize it. We project an image to others, to our peers, to our family, that everything is doing well. But deep inside, we may be answering no to the cast questions that we presented earlier. So whether it's self-talk or it's really expressed, you tell your spouse, you tell your friends about your negative reactions, listen to your reactions. Do you say, oh, there's something I can do here? Or is your language, sorry, I'll have to mention a Filipino phrase here, wala eh. Wala tayong magagawa eh. I'll translate, there's nothing we can do. And especially for people leaders, the more people you lead, that there's nothing I can do response is enough to also shape the mindset of others and communicate that sense of possible panic and increased fear. So listen to your response. Deep here, inside here, are you thinking it's controllable? Next, are you blaming somebody? Or are you asking, okay, nothing I can do. Yes, I may have a point. I would have wished that government is like this, that our community leaders are like this. I would have wished that our healthcare systems are better prepared for a pandemic. Bill Gates already warned us 5 years ago that something about this may happen. You may have wished that our organizations could have saved more money for times like this. But would you rather focus on that? Or would you rather focus on what you can do, and will you own it? Will you do it? Listen to your response, especially on the last two. Okay? The initial response can be, oh, I don't have much money, I have challenges in the family, I'm even caring for an elder person, I have dependents, there's nobody else to turn to. You know, when you begin to link possibly unrelated things together and visualize, have your own advanced nightmare of how all of these things are related to each other, you will start to lose your sanity. So better focus on compartmentalizing. Okay, I have a financial issue because of COVID. I know that my spouse or partner may have something to say about this. I know that I'm caring for a dependent, an old one, let's say your grandmother or your parent, and you don't want them catching the virus while you have simultaneous issues at the same time. It's really being able to focus and treat each one as separate areas that you need to deal with. Listen to your reaction. Are you saying 18 months is a long time or maybe more? Or perhaps we compound the issue by really saying it's the end of the world. The Bible is already predicted this, and you may cite scripture. Not that I'm against that. Of course, we all are entitled to practice our own faith, our own religion, but some kinds of thinking could be better directed to this will end, and what I do now towards end of this crisis, I have a choice. Listen to your response. It's good if you have a friend, if you have an immediate superior, if you have a peer who can redirect negative thoughts. If you think it's beyond my control, I am not accountable, I'll blame somebody. It is global, it's affecting all areas of my life. If it is permanent, somebody can help you redirect your thoughts there, good. But if not, it is your self-leadership that will enable you to move from reactive, automatic, instinctual thinking. And what do I mean by instinctual thinking? Blaming is instinctual thinking towards thinking of what the best possible response is. I spent some time here on leading or listening to your reaction. I'm linking it to the cast questions earlier because it starts here. Second is explore the situation. Once you are able to catch yourself, I'm thinking it's uncontrollable, and yes, you might be caught into that victimization mindset. You're blaming other things, and again, you may have a point, you may even have proof. How do you regain control and self-leadership? Is to explore the situation. Let's practice asking these questions. Okay, some people might be responsible for this. Our corporate, community, government leaders could have acted on this at the fastest way possible, but what portion was my fault? Okay? And not to blame anybody, doing my own self-reflection. If I have done more efforts to save more money, I operate a company of close to 20 people, if we practiced more cost management measures before to be able to ensure higher liquidity or better liquidity, then my small medium business will not be as challenged as how we are right now. What could I have done better, and what aspects of the results do I own? Okay? For example, what aspects of the results do I own? Maybe you've been subject to reduction of workforce in your respective company. If the basis was competency or skills based, it could be a better lesson for you how you could in your next career stop be more prepared, and how could you really continuously build your skills and offer increased value to your teams, organizations, and employers, so this will not happen again if something similar happens in the future. So exploration is all about asking questions. The previous step is self-assessment, and being able to listen to your self-talk, to what you're saying, what you're sharing, even to what you're posting on social media, because sometimes we use social media to express how we look at this crisis. Then, after asking questions, more importantly, challenging your thoughts, being evidence-based and fact-based. Let's start with the first question, and this is important. Is there any evidence? And we can go to the cast questions. Is there any evidence that I have no control over the situation? Is there any evidence that I can blame others all I want? Is there any evidence that this will affect all other areas in my life? And if whenever you start by asking possibly or probably, that means that you may be operating on assumptions, on myths and misconceptions. Okay? You may already be injecting more anxiety to yourself by linking unrelated things. Okay? And of course, these two questions here are about specificity and the temporary question in CAST. This step is important because if you are thinking of negative thoughts already as you go through CAST, this will lead you out of the negativity. This will help you see things as more controllable than uncontrollable. This will help you see that you are more accountable or you can do something about it. This can help you see that no matter how big this COVID issue is, it's just affecting one or two or three facets of your life and not everything. Okay? And no matter how vague or ambiguous the future may seem, there is hope. 7 research groups are already simultaneously working on finding the cure for this. So we just have to pitch in and do our share. Let's go to letter D. Do something. How can I get more information? That's the first question here. What's an application of how can I get more information? For example, if you're financially challenged during this time, of course, no customers out there. It is impacting your sales. You can't go out there. People on the field who previously do sales work, territory management, account management, you can do that now. So maybe information on new ways of doing things. And a training company like ours in LJMB, we're heavily challenged with this because our business model was based on me and our other trainers going to site, the venue of our clients, and delivering training face-to-face. In the past 4 weeks in lockdown, we have to get more information, more options on how we can make use of our talents in presenting and training and still continue to sustain the business. And one of the ways that we discovered is doing these webinars like you, our contribution to continuously informing, inspiring, and influencing people. Please pass it on and share it to others. Do something to solve the problem. If it's lack of, if you're financially impacted, are there existing online work that you can do? Here in our subdivision or village down south, it's fascinating that our Facebook page of residents became so active, okay, that you can practically access any supply that you need from your neighbors. People now ventured into different kinds of entrepreneurships. One would sell cookies, one would sell bread, one would sell different kinds of dessert. A lot of people have offered their services to fix things at home, of course observing social distancing. How can you gain more control of this adversity? Or maybe more control of yourself? And how can you also influence others? For example, of course, at work, you are continuously influencing others. I know that your teleconferences and video calls are still ongoing. It's BAU or business as usual for most of the organizations. We have to continue operating or perhaps prepare for the future. So this is now the time for a lot of improvements, process improvements, brainstorming, product development, and by so doing, you need to sell your ideas and influence others. Now, personally, we have a 94-year-old grandmother whom we are trying to take care of in our family, and this 94-year-old grandmother is in the care of my sister. And it's complicated that because the caregivers are no longer, the paid caregivers can no longer report to work because of the lockdown. We have to increase our collaboration among family members and really influence others to do their share and to take action. And if there's nothing that we can do because the reality is already there, COVID um, has already railroaded a lot of things beyond our control. The last question that I leave you here is, how can you diminish the negative impact of COVID? And I believe that a lot of businesses, especially those who are financially impacted, small, medium businesses, are looking at just risk mitigation. Okay? If everybody will take a loss, then what's the best case scenario or least or worst case scenario that we can engage in here? It's really time for self-leadership. It starts by listening to our thoughts, listening to our day-to-day. And sometimes, on a good day, you're positive, you're inspired, you're energized. Are you energized more on a Monday or towards the weekend? You also have to look at that patterns, because people will behave, will respond to adversity in different ways. Don't forget, explore the situation. Get more information. Observe. Don't get so overwhelmed. Don't allow the situation around you to overwhelm you. And analyze the evidence. Here is where you do your own personal fact-checking. Controllable, accountable, specific, and temporary. And as I said, if you say yes to all of those, then you will be more motivated. You won't see more stumbling blocks along the way, and you will now be ready to engage in more action. Level up your AQ. The rest of the webinars this week, tomorrow and Thursday, we'll talk to several people, leaders. We already have a significant number of attendees here. We'll talk about boosting your team's motivation and sustaining morale amidst everything that's happening right now. On Thursday, we'll talk about how do you coach work-from-home employees. It can really be frustrating and taxing, tedious, because of the absence of physical interaction. And another free webinar on Friday. Please join us here on what's next in this COVID journey, based on a review of literature, 15 articles that I have seen predicting trends and even activities that will happen in the next 18 months. I'm very excited to show you that this COVID crisis is really just what it is, an adversity that we can manage, we can harness. Remember, cast, it's controllable. Yes, we have a part in it. No use in blaming. We'll take accountability. It's specific, and we just need to outlast this. Time to display our self-leadership, just like a surfer who, because of his skill set, because of his confidence, because he's done it so many times, he's invested hours of practice. He gets bored when he sees calm waters. But when he sees a wave coming up, and he knows that it's coming, he excitedly rushes to water and proves to himself he can master it. I know that right now we are in different levels of adversity quotient. Please remember the 5 steps, cast and lead, and may you start strengthening your adversity quotient. There could be no better time to do this than with this crisis in front of us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and see you in our upcoming webinars.